Tim, delighted that you could join us. And here's the blunt, simple question, and it flows a little from what Benedict and I were talking about, but it's the macro picture. How do you shift your party from being the magnificent serial victor of by-elections to being a real contestant in this profoundly new, quite electric phase of politics?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you, Alistair, and thanks very much for having us. It's a good question. Of course, let's first remember that post-coalition, Liberal Democrats weren't even winning by-elections or anything else for that matter. So often it's a case when you've been through the kind of trials and tribulations we have as a party that it takes a while to get back into a position where you're properly in the game. And I think we're properly in the game. I think being competitive in local elections is hugely significant, because without that, you've got no building blocks to ever win parliamentary seats. And yes, over the years, we've had a good reputation at winning by-elections, but that is also part of our ability to be a party that can appeal to people who are looking for a change. And there are many parts of the country where I think we're growing and becoming stronger. The two kind of broad areas where we have become much stronger, in England in particular, are those areas that are, shall we say, the commuter belts around London, Manchester, and then also places like mine. I mean, at the last general election, I think I'm probably right to say that in England, mine was the only seat that didn't go Conservative that was of this sort, a rural constituency. We've now won 2 of them in by-elections. And if you look at our strength in rural parts of the north and the south of England, that we're beginning to grow in strength. People are looking for an alternative. And I think some people in, North Shropshire be a good example of a place where we came third at the last election, but won the by-election. I think the reason is that whilst our floor in places like that might be lower than Labour's floor, our ceiling is higher than Labour's ceiling, and therefore we can win in those seats even though Labour can't. And credibility is 9/10 the problem in politics. If people think you can win, you're in with a shout.
Yeah. And worth reminding folk at home that your seat has been Tory in living memory as well as Liberal Democrat.
Beyond living memory. So
absolutely. It goes. Andy Burnham, who I know that you know, just gave a fascinating interview to Gloria De Piero, who you also know. And on the budget, which really does dominate so much of the thinking because it affects everybody's lives, but it's also about political philosophy, Burnham said to Gloria, this budget goes beyond policy and beyond politics. It's about morality, and it's just wrong. You've always been a politician who's been very happy to talk about morality and about values and even about faith. Do you see this budget as being dangerous for the opposition parties like yours, because if it goes right, it is going to restore growth? Or is it an open goal because you can bang on about morality and values?
I think it isn't moral to decide at a time of great need, when we're having to borrow hundreds of millions, billions indeed, that our children will have to repay, and to be using a good chunk of that to give tax cuts to people who really don't need them, to bankers, to people buying second and third and fourth homes in my constituency, or indeed to people who are on the top rate of income tax. I think that is not moral. I also think it's bad politics. I think there are many people out there who believe that fairness matters. Now, everybody's driven by a level of selfishness. There's no doubt about that. But I think people will see the juxtaposition. We are borrowing vast amounts of money, and some of that money is being borrowed in order to give people who are very wealthy money that they don't need and they probably won't even spend in this country. So I think Andy Burnham is right to say that there's something morally wrong at the heart of this mini budget, but I think it's also economically wrong and will probably be politically counterproductive. I suspect the 1p tax cut for the basic rate will be broadly popular. I don't suppose we will oppose it. We can see a value in giving people on lower middle incomes some of their money back, because they'll spend it, let's be honest. But I don't see any economic value in giving extremely wealthy people more money that they won't spend. At least they won't spend it in this country. So it's not only economically stupid, probably politically counterproductive, I think it is immoral too.
Final question. There's a perennial story about pacts, and it's there again in the Sunday papers today. You can either confirm or deny it, because you will know. You know what Sir Ed's up to and the rest of the team, and you're a part of that team. So either deny it or confirm it. But more importantly, do you think that is right, as we are within a couple of years of a general election, and that's where our conversation started, if you will, should you consciously go into that election saying, had enough of the Tories, we are offering you a joint Lib-Lab pact again?
No, I mean, I'm fairly confident that won't happen. I am also fairly confident that voters around the country who think it's time to move on from the Conservatives will use their votes intelligently and will vote for one of the opposition parties, depending on whether they're most likely to win in their area. I think that there's no doubt from my perspective that Keir Starmer, having moved the Labour Party away from the hard left, and I think he's done a good job of that, means that there will probably be more exchanging of votes between Labour and Liberal Democrats, and indeed some Conservative voters will feel more or less afraid, shall we say, of a change of government than they might have done if Jeremy Corbyn was still leader of the Labour Party. But no, my job and our job as Liberal Democrats is to go and present what we think to the country and try to win as many places as we can. And as Theresa May found out after 2017, as all party leaders found out after 2010, sometimes you fight an election and you don't win and nobody wins, and you've got to make something of the electoral arithmetic that's left with you, that you're left with. So I'm not saying there won't be any kind of cooperation between different parties after an election. I don't know what the arithmetic's going to be, neither do you. We'll respond to it when it comes.